first thing with the panda that we're going to do is you're going to make a hump for the head, and then you can do the cheeks, and then one underneath for the bottom. And then those eyes. Another small circle in the middle. And a bigger oval for the nose. And then it's up to you. You can put the cute little tongue or you can leave it out. Can add the ears, and then we have a curve right here that's going to separate the black and white. Moving down to the arms, and these don't have to be perfect. That's what's nice about these. They're just cute little baby animals. So we're going to put a little hump here for the bottom, and then we're going to exaggerate those paws. And do the middle. And then we'll see how many toes you can fit. Usually like 3 or 4. 1, 2, I could fit about 3. And then you can just put a little indication for their paws up top here, almost like he's holding his toes. That's cute. And now, before we get into the ink, you want to make sure, this one isn't, but you want to make sure that your whatever brush pen you're using is waterproof, because we're going to add some color onto these, but you definitely don't want it to bleed. My fine liner here is waterproof. Or I also wanted to show, I have some Indian ink from Jackson's Art that is waterproof. You just have to use an actual brush to put it on. This is acrylic artist ink. So we just have to shake it up and play around with that as well. So you do have options depending on what supplies you have. First, we're going to go ahead and lighten up the lines. And I'm working on watercolor paper. You definitely want to be using a heavier paper because we're going to be using the ink and, like I mentioned, the painting on top later after the ink is dry. And this is a kneaded eraser. So just go ahead and we're going to lighten up those lines. For some added color, I'm just gonna do a splash of a nice magenta here. So there's that, and then I'm gonna add a little extra water and then smooth it out in some certain areas and the cheeks. And that wraps it up for the end of our little panda here. So we're going to be moving on to project number 2. For project number 2, we have the sleepy bunny, and I have 2 different positions here, so you can feel free to choose either one. Both of them are pretty easy to draw. So you're going to start off with the head and the cheeks, and then come down and around a simple oval shape here for the body, and then you can add some arms and paws. And remember to keep it really simple. These are just cute illustrations. They don't have to be super realistic, and it's okay if the head is a little bit bigger, or maybe you want like a big huge puffy tail. So you can have fun with that and play around with some of the features. And this position here, we have the ear coming down instead of sticking up. And this one has the sleepy eyes as well, and his little body with the hands and feet here. But now we're going to jump right into some of the ink and then do the watercolor on top. Here I wanted to show a close-up. I'm going to use some of the gold brown and some of the ochre for the bunny. I was thinking gray and pink, but we're going to be using them for the penguin. So you can keep that in mind as well, because you don't want everything to look the same. So we're going to go with these 2, and then maybe like a tiny bit of a pink in the ears. And I am going to use this color on the cheeks. It's a nice peachy color. And then you may have to touch up your line work a little bit. And that wraps up this quick tutorial for the little bunny. And next up, we're going to move on to the penguin. Here we have our penguin, and I'm going to lighten up the lines with my kneaded eraser. And for the penguin, I am going to add a little bit more line work with their feathers and the eyes are really tiny on this one. And then there's the beak. And then there's just some indication here for their feet. And then some of their feathers here. And then if you want the cheeks really puffy. Can make the lines a little bit thicker and darker here to show some shadows underneath where the wings are. And then can do maybe just a few little lines for in between on the feet there. And also for the penguin here, you can use black and water it down a bit to get your gray, or if you have Payne's gray, you can use that as well. Or I thought as something a little bit more interesting, you can add a tiny bit of blue mixed in with your black, or maybe some indigo, just to make it a little bit more fun and add some more colors. It may be a bit hard to see on camera, but the first one is black, and then the second one is indigo, and then the last one is the two mixed together. So you can try it out on a scrap sheet and then see which one that you'd like to use. I'm just gonna set that on the side. And then I'm gonna use my blue and black mixed together. And then you can start off with a light wash because you can always add more. You don't want to jump in with the black too hard there, because you'll only be able to get so much of that off if you don't like it and you think it's too dark. Plus we can do the wet on wet technique here, and then with the a medium shade of gray we have going on here, and then I'm just dropping in bits of the indigo and letting it spread around and create its own pattern. And the reference photo that I was looking at has a light gray for the body area here. And we're going to let the arms bleed through a little bit because then it's going to create that shadow. And then through here on the feet. And then I would let the face area dry up a bit before you go in and do the eyes and the beak. After my face was dry, I went ahead with my fine liner and I filled in the eyes, and I also curled, you could see a tiny bit on the ends where the beak is, just to give it a little extra. It almost looks like he has a little smile there. And that wraps it up for our little penguin. And next we're going to move on to the hybrid animal. So I will show a demonstration of what I did, and then for one of your projects you can feel free to create your own. So mine is going to be the dog and the bunny, but yours can be like a giraffe and a cat, or a cat and a dog, or an elephant and whatever other your favorite animal is. So you can feel free to have some fun with that. So that's coming up next. And because this one is a made-up little creature here that we're doing, I am going to use some wild and crazy colors just to add to it to make it a little bit more fun. Some of the colors that I ended up using for this last project was the opera pink that I'm using right now, a bright golden yellow, and then some of that bled together and ended up turning like a really nice orange. I put some turquoise in the ears, and there was some mint green for the front of the face. The nose was yellow, and then I added a little tiny bit of blue on the tail just to indicate it was like nice and fluffy, but I did want to leave a lot of the white as well. And that wraps it up for the entire class today. I hope that you did enjoy some of these fun new projects, and I'll see you next time.